One kiss only, whispered the billionaire. A contract born of lies, a love born of truth. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Rain streaked down the glass walls of a high-rise building in downtown Seattle. Inside the top-floor boardroom, the air was sharp with the scent of espresso and tension. At the end of the long oak table sat Ethan Cole, the billionaire CEO of Cole Dynamics. His navy suit was immaculate, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. Across from him, a young woman in a second-hand blouse twisted her hands in her lap. Lila Evans, a barista from the cafe downstairs, was still trying to understand why she had been summoned to the 52nd floor. Ethan slid a thick envelope across the table. His voice was calm, deliberate. "Marry me. Think of it as a contract." Lila blinked, certain she had misheard him. "I am sorry. What did you just say?" "Marry me," he repeated. "For 6 months. You will be compensated generously. This is not about romance. It is about business." Thunder rolled outside, shaking the window. Lila stared at him, her heart hammering. "This must be some kind of joke," she said quietly. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," Ethan replied. "You work in the cafe downstairs. You take extra shifts. You send most of your paycheck to the hospital where your mother is being treated. I also know you are about to lose your apartment by the end of the month." Her breath caught. "How do you know all that?" He leaned back in his chair, his eyes cold but not cruel. "Because I do my homework, and because I need a solution that looks believable." Lila swallowed hard. "Believable for what?" "My company is facing a hostile takeover," he said. "The board believes I am unstable after my broken engagement with one of our investors' daughters. A married man appears steady, trustworthy. I need that image to keep control of my shares." Go. He paused, then added softly, "And you need money. We can help each other." The room fell silent except for the rain. Lila's fingers brushed the edge of the envelope. Inside, she could see a formal contract, typed and signed, with her name already printed at the top. "What exactly are the rules?" she asked. 5 conditions, Ethan said. "No intimacy, no interference in each other's private lives. Appear together at 5 public events. Live under one roof for credibility. And he hesitated, then met her eyes. "One kiss only. In public. For the cameras." Lila gave a small, incredulous laugh. "You are unbelievable." "I am practical," he replied. She stared at the dotted line at the bottom of the page. Her mother's hospital bills flashed through her mind, the eviction notice folded in her purse, the empty refrigerator waiting at home. Her voice trembled. "If I say yes, what happens next?" Ethan's answer was quiet, almost gentle. "Then your life changes tonight." Lila looked up at him. In his eyes, she saw no warmth, no promise of love, only a man who treated feelings like numbers on a balance sheet. And yet something inside her whispered that this single, impossible choice might alter everything. She took the pen, signed her name, and slid the paper back toward him. Ethan's expression did not change, but a faint exhale escaped him, as if relief had finally found a way through the armor. "Welcome to our agreement," he said. Outside, lightning flashed against the skyline, reflecting in the window like a warning. Lila whispered, "One kiss only," almost to herself, as if saying it out loud would make it real. Neither of them knew that the lie they just signed would soon reveal a truth neither was ready to face. Outside the tower, the rain had not stopped. Lila stood on the sidewalk with the contract pressed against her chest, her mind spinning. Neon lights blurred in the puddles at her feet, painting the city in streaks of gold and red. Somewhere above, thunder rolled again, as if the sky itself was warning her. She looked down at her reflection in the wet pavement, a girl in a cheap coat, her mascara slightly smudged, her eyes filled with disbelief. By the time she reached her small apartment on the east side of Seattle, it was almost midnight. The elevator was broken again, so she climbed 5 flights of stairs, her legs aching. Inside, the place was silent, except for the steady hum of the old refrigerator. Her mother's hospital bills were spread across the kitchen table, unpaid and heavy as guilt. She placed the envelope beside them and sat down, staring at both the papers that held her mother's life and the papers that held her own. Her phone buzzed, It was the hospital. The nurse's voice was kind but tired. Your mother's treatment cannot continue unless the balance is cleared by Friday. Lila closed her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, her voice cracking. When the call ended, she sat there for a long time, the city sounds outside fading into a distant hum. The word marriage echoed in her mind like something foreign, something unreal. She was 24, barely surviving, and now a billionaire had asked her to marry him as if it were a business deal. She opened the envelope again. The contract was typed in neat black font, every clause numbered and clear. Her name, Lila Evans, was printed cleanly at the top. At the bottom, Ethan Cole's signature already gleamed in blue ink. The final line read, "This agreement is binding for 6 months, or until the objectives of both parties are fulfilled." Her breath trembled. 6 months. That was long enough to save her mother, long enough to pay off the debts that had crushed her since college, long enough to breathe again. But the thought made her chest tighten. What kind of woman signs her name to a marriage she does not believe in? What kind of person sells her name for survival? A knock came at the door. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Harris, holding a paper bag of soup. "Sweetheart, you look pale," the old woman said. "You working too many shifts again?" Lila forced a small smile. "Just tired, Mrs. Harris. Thank you for the soup. Take care of yourself," the woman said softly before leaving. When the door closed, Lila sank onto the couch and held the warm bag in her hands. Her fingers brushed the edge of the contract again. She wanted to burn it, to forget it, but the memory of Ethan's calm voice kept replaying. "You need money, I need stability. We can help each other." It was cruel logic, but it was also true. The next morning, the alarm went off at 6. Lila pulled on her CAF uniform and walked to work under a gray sky. The air smelled of rain and roasted coffee beans. Her co-workers chatted about movies and weekend plans, but she barely heard them. Every ring of the cash register sounded like a clock counting down. At 10 o'clock sharp, Ethan Cole walked into the CAF. The room fell silent. Even the milk frother seemed to hesitate. He was wearing the same dark suit, his tie perfectly straight, his expression unreadable. He waited in line like everyone else. When it was finally his turn, Lila swallowed hard. "Good morning, Mr. Cole." "Good morning, Mrs. Evans," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. The words made her heart skip. "Do not call me that," she whispered. He glanced around, then leaned closer. "You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires." She stared at him, stunned. "Why me? You could choose anyone." "I do not need anyone," he said. "I need someone who will not complicate things. You are honest, and you do not want my world. That makes you perfect." "Monsieur." He set a business card on the counter, paid for his coffee, and walked out without looking back. The card was simple: his name, his private number, the company logo embossed in silver. On the back, written in neat handwriting, were 3 words. "Think carefully, Lila." That night, she sat by the window watching the rain fall again. The city glowed with 1,000 windows, each belonging to someone who probably did not have to make choices like this. She took a deep breath and reached for her phone. Her thumb hovered over his number. Then she typed one line. "I accept your terms." The message sent. A single moment of silence stretched between them. Then her phone buzzed. His reply came instantly. "A car will pick you up at 8 tomorrow morning. Bring your ID." Lila's heart pounded as she stared at the screen. Her hand trembled as she whispered to herself, "What have I just done?" Outside, thunder rolled once more across the city. Somewhere above the skyline, in a glass office that touched the clouds, Ethan Cole smiled faintly and closed his phone. For the first time in years, he felt something unexpected: uncertainty. Neither of them knew it yet, but the agreement they had just sealed with a message would soon test every boundary between duty and desire. The next morning, gray light spilled through the thin curtains of Lila's apartment. She had barely slept. Every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator felt louder than usual, as if the world itself was holding its breath with her. At exactly 8 o'clock, a black sedan stopped in front of her building. The driver stepped out and opened the door without a word. Lila stood there for a moment, clutching her small purse, before taking a deep breath and climbing inside. The city blurred past the window. She watched the rain-soaked streets, the people rushing to work, the umbrellas colliding on sidewalks. For a moment, she wanted to ask the driver to turn back, but when she thought of her mother lying in a hospital bed, she pressed her lips together and stayed silent. The car pulled up in front of the Cole Dynamics Tower. Inside the lobby, everything was made of glass, marble, and silence. The receptionist greeted her politely and handed her a visitor's badge with her name already printed. Mrs. Lila Evans. Cole. She froze. Seeing her name like that felt unreal. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. When the doors opened, Ethan was waiting. He looked exactly the same, impeccable, unreadable, like a man who had planned every second of his life. "You are on time," he said simply. "You told me not to be late," she replied. He gestured toward his office. On the long desk, a stack of documents waited. The air smelled faintly of coffee and expensive leather. "This," he said, sliding a pen toward her, "is the final copy. It includes the 5 clauses we discussed. I suggest you read it again before you sign." Lila picked it up. Her eyes moved slowly down the list of conditions. The marriage will remain confidential for the first 30 days. No intimacy of any kind except for public appearances. Both parties will live under one roof for credibility. The contract is valid for 6 months. 1 kiss only, to be shared in front of witnesses when required. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the papers back down. 1 kiss only, she repeated quietly. Ethan's gaze flickered for a second. Then he nodded. Yes, that is all the world needs to believe it. She looked at the dotted line. The silence between them was heavy, filled with things unsaid. Then she took the pen and signed her name again, her handwriting smaller this time, her pulse unsteady. Ethan reached for the second pen and added his signature beside hers. "Congratulations," he said, his tone formal. "From this moment on, you are Mrs. Cole." The words felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else. He stood, walked around the desk, and opened a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no decoration, just plain and cold. "Put this on during public appearances," he said. "The media will expect it." She took the ring, feeling the chill of the metal against her skin. "It is beautiful," she said softly. "It is practical," he corrected. He turned toward the window, looking down at the city below. "You will move into my residence tonight. My assistant will help you pack your things." "Do I have a choice?" she asked. He looked over his shoulder, the corner of his mouth tightening just slightly. "You already made your choice, Lila." Her throat tightened. "Right. Of course." A moment later, his assistant entered the room, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a professional smile. "Mrs. Cole," she said warmly, "I will make sure your transition is comfortable." The title made Lila flinch. She nodded faintly, clutching her purse. As she followed the assistant out, Ethan watched her leave. His reflection in the glass looked back at him, calm and composed. But deep down, something in his chest moved, a flicker of unease he could not name. That evening, when Lila arrived at his penthouse overlooking Puget Sound, the doorman greeted her with a polite bow. The space was vast, filled with quiet luxury, marble floors, black leather, city lights stretching beyond the windows. Her footsteps echoed softly as she walked through the hall. The bedroom prepared for her was elegant but distant, a perfect place for someone who was not supposed to stay. On the dresser lay another envelope. Inside was a Schedule 5 upcoming events, dates neatly printed, each with a note beside it, appearance required. Lila sat on the edge of the bed, the ring glinting under the soft light. For the first time, the weight of what she had done settled fully on her shoulders. She whispered into the empty room, "1 kiss only." The words tasted like both promise and warning. Somewhere across the hall, Ethan stood by the window, looking out over the city. The rain had stopped, but the night felt heavier than before. Both of them had signed the same deal, yet neither truly understood the cost. The following morning, sunlight crept through the floor to ceiling windows of Ethan's penthouse, scattering across polished marble. Lila woke to a silence that felt too perfect, too clean. She had expected servants, noise, life. Instead, everything was still, as if the house itself was holding its breath, unsure what to do with her presence. Her first breakfast as Mrs. Cole was already waiting in the dining room, black coffee, a single croissant, and a small note written in neat handwriting. "Meeting at 9. Stay ready. Wear the outfit prepared for you." The clothes on the bed were elegant but modest. A cream-colored dress, pearl earrings, and matching heels that looked far more expensive than her rent had ever been. Lila slipped into them, glancing once at her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked like someone she did not know. At 9 sharp, Ethan appeared at the door. He wore a gray suit and carried an air of control so natural it almost felt cold. "You look presentable," he said simply. "I will take that as a compliment," she replied, her tone careful. He gave a slight nod. "Today will be your first introduction to my world. There is a meeting at the Cole Foundation. You will accompany me as my wife. Speak only if spoken to." The car ride was quiet. Lila sat beside him, hands folded tightly in her lap. Outside, Seattle moved by in streaks of silver and green. She watched the reflections in the car window, two people sitting close enough to touch but separated by an invisible wall. At the foundation's main hall, cameras flashed the moment they stepped out. Ethan's hand rested lightly on her back, a gesture rehearsed for the public. The crowd murmured as the billionaire and his new wife entered. A reporter asked cheerfully, "Mr. Cole, is it true you married in private last week?" Ethan's smile was measured. "It is true," he said. "I prefer actions to announcements." The reporter turned to Lila. "And how did you two meet?" For a second, she froze. Then, remembering their plan, she smiled politely. "He ordered coffee," she said, "and I spilled it." The crowd laughed, the tension dissolved, and Ethan's hand pressed gently against her back, almost approving. Cameras clicked again, capturing what looked like affection. After the event, inside the car, he spoke first. "You handled that well." Lila looked out the window. "It was not difficult. I tell that story every day at the caf." He glanced at her, almost surprised by her quiet humor. "You might do fine in this after all." Back at the penthouse, Ethan's assistant handed Lila a thick binder labeled Social Protocols and Appearances. "You will study this," the assistant said politely. "You will need to learn the correct greetings, seating orders, and how to respond to journalists. Mr. Cole has a very precise image to maintain." Lila nodded, flipping through the pages that listed instructions on how to walk, smile, and speak. Every sentence felt like another invisible chain tightening around her. The following days turned into a blur of training. A stylist taught her posture. A speech coach corrected her tone. A photographer arranged her for practice shots in evening gowns. Each night, she returned to her room exhausted, peeling off perfection like it was armor. One evening, she found Ethan sitting alone in the living room, reading a stack of reports. The city lights reflected off the glass walls, painting his face in fragments of gold. "You do this every night?" she asked quietly. He looked up from the papers. "What else is there to do?" "Sleep maybe," she said, half smiling. "Sleep is for people who can afford to dream," he replied, his tone flat but not unkind. She hesitated. "And you cannot?" He did not answer. He just looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing something invisible. Then he said softly, "You should get some rest, Lila." That night, Lila lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The city glowed outside, a sea of lights that never seemed to end. She wondered how a man could have everything: power, money, respect, and still look so lonely. In the morning, another note awaited her on the table. "Dinner tomorrow. Board members attending. Be ready to act the part." She sighed, folding the paper carefully. Every instruction, every rule reminded her of the distance between them. Yet beneath it all, there was a strange pull she could not ignore, the quiet realization that behind Ethan's steel fade lived a man who might have forgotten how to feel. And though she promised herself to keep things professional, part of her heart had already begun to break its own rule. The evening of the board dinner arrived with a chill wind sweeping over the city. From the balcony of the penthouse, Lila could see the lights of downtown glittering below like 1,000 eyes watching. Inside, she stood before the mirror, fastening the small pearl earrings that Ethan's assistant had placed on her vanity. The gown chosen for her was navy blue, sleek and elegant, the kind that looked effortless only on women who did not have to think about price tags. When Ethan appeared at her door, he paused for half a second. His eyes softened, almost imperceptibly. "You look appropriate," he said finally. Lila smiled faintly. "For a second, I thought you might say beautiful." His expression barely changed. "I do not use words I cannot afford." Oh. The car ride to the dinner was quiet, the air thick with unspoken tension. When they arrived at the Cole Foundation Hall, the place was already alive with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the murmur of wealth. Every table glowed under chandeliers shaped like falling stars. Cameras flashed as they entered. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Lila's back, the perfect picture of composure. At the long table sat the most powerful names in the company: board members, investors, and their polished spouses. Ethan led Lila to her seat beside him. A woman across the table leaned forward with a glossy smile. "So this is the mysterious Mrs. Cole. We have heard so much about you." Lila smiled politely. Only good things, I hope. The woman chuckled. That depends on who you ask. Lila could feel eyes watching her from every side, waiting for her to make a mistake. She held her fork delicately, repeating every rule drilled into her during the training sessions. When one of the older board members asked how she and Ethan had met, she answered calmly, "He ordered coffee, and I spilled it on him. He did not fire me, so I suppose that was the beginning." Laughter rippled around the table. Ethan's lips curved slightly, and for the first time the smile reached his eyes. The tension in the room eased, replaced by curiosity and, perhaps, a trace of admiration. Midway through the evening, a waiter tripped, sending a glass of red wine cascading across the white tablecloth. The stain spread toward the guest of honor's plate. Without thinking, Lila grabbed a napkin and pressed it over the spill, murmuring an apology before anyone else could react. The man she helped looked startled, then amused. "You have quick reflexes," he said. "She does," Ethan replied quietly, his voice carrying just enough warmth to be heard. "It is one of her best qualities." "Men?" The compliment surprised her more than it should have. For a moment, she forgot that every gesture tonight was supposed to be calculated. When the dinner ended, the board members congratulated Ethan on his successful quarter and his charming wife. As they stepped outside, the cold air wrapped around them, sharp and clean after the heat of the banquet hall. "You did well," Ethan said. "You handled them better than some professionals I know." Lila turned to him. "You mean better than the fiancé who left you?" His jaw tightened, but he did not look away. "Careful, Mrs. Cole." She met his gaze steadily. "You told me to play my part. That is what I am doing." They stood in silence for a long moment, the streetlight painting pale gold across his face. Finally, he opened the car door for her. "Get in. We are done here." On the drive back, neither of them spoke. The rain had returned, soft and rhythmic against the glass. Lila watched the reflection of his profile, strong, calm, untouchable, and wondered how much of it was real. When they reached the penthouse, he stopped by the elevator and said quietly, "You proved you can survive my world. That is more than most could say." Lila turned toward her room, her voice almost a whisper. "I did not come here to survive, Ethan. I came here to keep a promise." He looked at her, something unspoken flickering behind his eyes, but said nothing. The elevator doors closed between them, sealing another layer of silence neither knew how to break. The following days passed quietly, almost too quietly. The dinner had gone well, yet something between them had shifted. Ethan had grown more reserved, more distant than before. Lila still played her part, the gracious wife, the polite smile, but behind closed doors. Silence filled the penthouse like a fog. One night, she walked out to the balcony after another long charity event. The city lights shimmered below, and the faint hum of traffic rose from the streets. She wrapped her arms around herself and breathed in the cold air. Behind her, the glass door slid open. Ethan stepped out, his tie loosened, the sharpness in his expression replaced by fatigue. "You should not be out here in that dress," he said softly. "It is freezing." "I like the cold," she replied. "It feels real." He leaned against the railing beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was not heavy this time. It was strangely peaceful. "Why do you work so hard?" she asked finally. "You already have everything." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "People say that a lot. But the truth is, when you have everything, you spend the rest of your life trying not to lose it." She turned toward him, surprised by the honesty in his tone. "Is that why you made this contract? To keep from losing something?" He hesitated. "Yes, the company. My father built it, and I cannot let it fall into the wrong hands." "And what about you?" she asked quietly. "What have you lost already?" His eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was no wall between them. "Someone I thought would stay," he said simply. Lila looked away. The wind lifted a strand of her hair, brushing it across his arm. Neither moved. The distance between them had become smaller, fragile. After a long pause, Ethan said, "You are not what I expected." "No? What did you expect?" "A problem," he said. "But you turned out to be the only thing in this house that feels alive." The words hung between them, soft and dangerous. Lila's heartbeat quickened. She searched his face for sarcasm, but there was none. "I am not sure that is a compliment," she whispered. "It was not supposed to be one," he said. But the corner of his mouth curved slightly, betraying warmth. A faint smile touched her lips, but she turned away, afraid of what he might see in her eyes. Inside, the grandfather clock struck midnight. Ethan straightened, the moment broken. "We have another event tomorrow. the annual gala. Be ready by 7. When he walked back inside, Lila stayed on the balcony, staring at the reflection of the city lights on the wet glass. The sound of the wind carried his words back to her, the only thing that feels alive. For the first time since signing that contract, she wondered what would happen if one of them stopped pretending. The night of the annual gala arrived with the kind of perfection that only money could buy. The ballroom glowed with gold light, chandeliers dripping like frozen stars. Music drifted through the air, elegant and distant. Lila walked beside Ethan, her arm linked with his, her smile practiced and calm. To everyone watching, they looked flawless, a couple made for the front page of every magazine. But beneath the calm surface, Ethan's world was beginning to tremble. Earlier that morning, he had received an anonymous message with a single photo attached to their marriage contract. Someone had leaked it. As they greeted guests, Ethan's eyes scanned the room, every handshake calculated, every word careful. Lila sensed something was wrong. She could feel the tension in the way he held her hand. Too firm, too deliberate. "Ethan," she whispered when they paused near the stage. "What happened?" "Nothing you can fix," he said quietly. "Just stay close." The speeches began. Laughter filled the room. Cameras flashed. And then, as dessert was served, a reporter from one of the city tabloids stood and asked loudly, "Mr. Cole, is it true that your marriage is only a contract?" The entire ballroom fell silent. Lila froze. Ethan's expression did not change, but the air around him did. Slowly, he rose from his chair. "That," he said evenly, "is a question beneath this event. But since you have asked, my wife and I have nothing to hide." He looked at her then, his eyes steady but tired. "Lila, would you like to answer?" For a moment, she could not breathe. Every gaze in the room turned toward her. Then she stood, her voice calm but trembling at the edges. "Yes," she said. "There was a contract. But no agreement could have prepared me for what came after." The crowd murmured. Ethan's jaw tightened. Lila took a slow breath and added softly, "Sometimes people sign things to survive, but surviving is not the same as living." The room was quiet again. The lights, the cameras, the whispers, all of it blurred. Ethan reached for her hand under the table, just for a second, a silent apology no one else could see. But it was too late. The lie they had built together was now public, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after the gala, headlines flooded every news outlet in Seattle. The billionaire's contract bride. Marriage for profit or love. Every photograph showed Ethan and Lila frozen under the chandelier's light, her eyes wide, his hand reaching for hers. The story spread faster than either of them could react. By noon, reporters had gathered outside the Cole Dynamics tower. Lila had locked herself in the guest room of the penthouse, the blinds drawn. Her phone buzzed nonstop messages from strangers, tabloids, even her former co-workers at the cafe. Each notification was a reminder of how far her life had fallen out of her control. Ethan stood in his office, staring at the television without speaking. His assistant hovered nearby. "The board is demanding an emergency meeting," she said quietly. "They want to know if the marriage was fabricated to protect your shares." Ethan's voice was low, steady. "Tell them I will handle it myself." When the assistant left, he picked up his phone and scrolled through messages from investors, lawyers, and publicists, all demanding explanations. But there was only one message he cared about, the one from Lila, written at dawn. "I am sorry, Ethan. I did not mean to ruin everything. I am leaving tonight. Other one." He found her hours later, standing by the elevator with a small suitcase. Her hair was loose, her eyes red but clear. "You do not have to go," he said softly. "I do," she replied. "You made a deal with a stranger. You did not sign up for someone who feels." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You think I do not feel?" She shook her head. "I think you forgot how." For a long moment, neither moved. Then he said quietly, "I can fix this." Lila smiled sadly. "That is the problem, Ethan. You think everything can be fixed." The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside without looking back. "Goodbye, Mr. Cole." When the doors closed, Ethan stood there, motionless, the echo of her words lingering in the still air. That night he called a press conference. The cameras clicked as he walked to the podium. His voice, when it came, was calm but stripped of all pretense. "The only lie in that contract," he said, "was that I would not fall in love." Coming. For the first time, the world saw not a billionaire, but a man finally telling the truth. The press conference went viral overnight. Millions watched the clip of Ethan standing before the microphones, his voice steady as he confessed. The only lie in that contract was that I would not fall in love. For the first time he had no script, no board of directors whispering in his ear, and no assistant telling him what to say. His honesty shocked everyone, including himself. But when the applause ended, Lila was already gone. She had taken a bus out of Seattle before the sun came up, leaving behind the penthouse, the designer dresses, and the headlines that had turned her into a stranger. The small town she returned to was quiet, hidden among pine trees and gray mist. She found a job at a local bookstore, something simple, something hers. Weeks passed. The scandal cooled, and so did the noise. Yet one morning, as she arranged books by the front window, a delivery truck stopped outside. The driver carried a large wooden crate addressed to Lila Evans. She frowned, signing the form. Inside the crate was a single-framed painting, a skyline of Seattle under a stormy sky. At the bottom corner was a small engraved plaque that read, "For the woman who taught me how to live." Tears filled her eyes before she even noticed the second envelope tucked beneath the frame. It was handwritten, his familiar, precise script. "I will not ask you to come back. I just want you to know the company is no longer the only thing I am trying to save. The world knows about us now, but I want them to know the truth, that what began as a lie became the most honest part of my life. If you ever forgive me, you know where to find me. Ethan." For days she left the letter on her nightstand, afraid to open that door again. But one evening, she caught herself whispering his name in her sleep. The next morning, she packed a small bag and bought a ticket back to the city. When she reached the Cole Foundation's new art gallery, the one he had quietly funded after stepping down as CEO, she froze at the entrance. The exhibit was called The Contract of Love. Inside, photographs captured their brief, chaotic story boardroom deals, gala nights, the single moment she had grabbed his hand on stage. And at the center of it all, behind a glass case, lay their original contract, burned along the edges, framed like a relic. A quiet voice spoke behind her. "I kept one clause," Ethan said. She turned. He stood a few feet away, no suit this time, no security, just a man, holding a simple gold ring. "Which clause?" she asked softly. "The one about the kiss," he said. "One kiss only, but this time it will not be for the cameras." Lila's heart pounded. The city noise outside faded until there was nothing but his voice. She took a slow step forward. "If I kiss you now, it will not be part of any deal." "I know," he said. "That is why it matters." And there, under the soft light of the gallery that bore their story, she closed the distance between them. The kiss was gentle, real, nothing like the one they had promised the world. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan smiled faintly. "One kiss only," he whispered. She smiled back through her tears. "Yes," she said, "but this time it means forever." Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft, forgiving, and new.